Welcome to the David Spisak Show. I'm very, very appreciative of you taking the time to join me, and I'm absolutely delighted to introduce somebody to you that I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years. I have massive respect for this gentleman for many reasons, I should say. The way he carries himself, the way he treats every single person I've ever seen him interact with, and what he's accomplished, which has been tremendous in this industry. Formerly with Techion, executive with Techion, before then an executive, part of the executive team for Automotive Mastermind. So clearly he's been aligned and associated with some of the most innovative companies in retail automotive in recent past. Now he's the founder and CEO of Interactive EQ. And this is a company, I can tell you, I've had the chance to look at it, investigate it, try it. I can promise you, you haven't heard of it yet for good reason. It's being introduced literally now this week, but I can absolutely guarantee you it's going to be a company that becomes known across the industry, because the number one thing that every dealership tells me, the biggest reason for a successful organization, they'll tell me, and the biggest challenge with a struggling organization, it's the same answer. It's people. It's culture. So I want to introduce you to Napo Rumteen, CEO and founder of Interactive EQ. And Napo, I want to thank you for taking the time to share with us, I think, more than just information about the company, because I think that in and of itself is interesting. But I really want to know, what was the impetus? What drove you? What was the defining moment that made you say, I have to do this. I have to move forward and take care of this challenge?
Thank you, David. First and foremost, thank you very much for having me on. I have tremendous respect and appreciation for you. So super excited to be here with you. So I've been in the auto industry my entire life, and I've spent the last 25 plus years in a leadership role and as a direct hiring manager. I did a calculation. I've interviewed well over 1,500 people in my career, and I know some have done more, maybe some have done less, but a recurring feeling that I keep going through when I go through these interviews is that I could have done more. I didn't tap into and really understand this candidate as well as I would have liked to. I'd like to know more. Or in some cases, when I was in a more when I was in a role where others would interview candidates and serve them up to me, sometimes I would wonder how this person made it as far as they did. I just realized there's something significantly gapped in the whole interviewing process, and something where our hiring managers and recruiters are not equipped very well to do, which is really dissecting someone's soft skills and emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. And so I was driven, every week I'd get a reminder of this, and it wouldn't even be with interviews or hires. It could be in meetings sometimes with people, and sometimes people would say things or do things, and I would say, well, that's kind of odd. Well, that wasn't tasteful. And I'm sure we've all lived through some of these. So for me, I felt really compelled. It's a 7-year-old idea, frankly, that I've had. But with the last couple of years, with the speed of generative AI's development, the ideas come together very clearly for me. So when I made the decision to pull the trigger and move forward, a lot of it had been built in my head. And I was very fortunate enough to team with some people and be able to bring it to fruition now.
There's so many things that are stirring around in my brain now just from that introduction. I'm always fascinated when we look at people that are in the public eye, whether they're athletes, members of a team. Seemingly they have everything, but they struggle to fit in, right, with a team. They're making all the money, but yet they're unhappy where they are. Or you have a situation where seemingly somebody has all the hard skills, if you will, but they just can't manifest those things into success. Or you see somebody in business and you say, how on God's green earth did this person achieve this level of success? I remember looking at the Forbes 400 list every single year, and one of the things that stood out to me was how clear it was that you can rank these people by by their wealth. And if you put an extra column and you put IQ next to that and you force ranked off IQ, it would be a completely different order. So there wasn't necessarily relevancy. And you sit there and you say, Napo, you say, God, many of us have said this, that person is some kind of an X factor that makes them rise, that makes them go beyond, over-index, exceed expectations. Is, in your mind, is that emotional quotient, that emotional intelligence, is that in fact the X factor?
Very, very much so. Very much so. And historically, for good reason, people have put hard skills as the primary thing to look at. You want to look at someone's experience, the ability to actually execute a job task, right? It's important. So you look at stuff like experience, education, certification, accomplishments. If you're looking at a salesperson, what kind of numbers have they done in the past? How much money have they earned, which is an indirect indicator. You look at like a service advisor at a service department, how many ROs do they write per day? These are things you look at to try and gauge whether they can do the day-to-day. But that is just the baseline. What really differentiates someone from being a person who goes through the motion to get the job done and what's a star performer is the soft skills. And I've talked to so many people, historically, they've looked at soft skills as kind of like the Robin to the Batman of hard skills, a nice to have. But when I've posed a few questions to them, it's all of a sudden as if a light bulb goes off. And I say, look, when you have a very delicate situation and you need to put some of your best employees to handle it, whether it's a VIP customer coming in to buy something, a car, let's say, or if it's a upset customer that's coming into service and it's a delicate situation, do you not select the right people to handle those scenarios because you trust in their ability to connect with those customers, to have the EQ, the wherewithal to read a situation, read people, have that sense of urgency? All of these intangibles are soft skills. And when I've had these conversations with people, all of a sudden they say, yeah, absolutely. That's the gold. That's what makes an outstanding performer.
This is so interesting. I can't help but think now. You ever see the movie The Sixth Sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. M. Night Shyamalan. You see that movie, and the brilliance of that is you're watching that movie through the whole thing, not suspecting a thing, and all of a sudden they pull that string at the end, and you go, oh my God, I didn't notice that. I kind of feel like that right now because I'm kind of sitting there thinking, is it completely possible, at least plausible, that in our careers, we ourselves who ended up having the opportunity and taking advantage of the opportunity, being able to rise up to become, junior managers, middle managers, upper managers, executive levels, whatever. And we had those soft skills. We had the ability to solve those very challenging situations. We had the ability to make tough decisions when it wasn't easy to do so, when it wasn't popular. We had the ability when we come into a situation with a client and it's one of those real gray areas to be equipped to know what to do, or to come between two employees, let's say, and be able to kind of bring peace and bring people together, or to build culture, to build a team. Soft skill, soft skill, soft skill, soft skill. And yet, throughout our career, nobody ever told us about soft skills. It just was kind of inherent in us. And so maybe are we looking at, for all these years, when we go hire somebody, we just kind of think everybody's got soft skills. And so we are just looking for what everybody's looking for, which is typically, hey, what experience do you have? Hey, what have you accomplished? Hey, do you know how to use CDK, or do you know how to use Techion? Do you know how to use this system, vAuto, Auto Alert, Mastermind, whatever? And we never stop to think, every one of the people around me that have elevated has something in common. They have those soft skills. It's a shame, Napo, I think. You may have to change this. You may have to patent this. I think you're going to have to trademark a different term, because I think that there's a bad connotation with the term soft skills.
Yeah, and I think, historically people have always looked at it as, oh, it's the difference between being hard and being soft, right? And in our organization, it's all
Yeah.
about being aggressive, taking charge, being strong,
Being
right? And so,
tough, strong, hard.
strong, hard, competitive. And so all of a sudden when you throw in stuff like emotional,
Yes.
sensitive,
We need more soft people in our organization.
yeah, we don't need soft people, but it's not, those words are wrong words. How about the ability to improvise?
Yes.
Right? Things don't always go right. You get the hardest guy, he's directed to go from point A to point B, but if there's a pebble on the road, they get stuck because they don't know how to improvise. So it's improvisation, it's having good
ingenuity,
taste.
Innovation, creativity.
Conflict resolution among teammates. I mean, you want to talk about leadership? I mean, leaders who have tremendous soft skills, this is the reason why they elevate. They're able to bring teams together, align them, making sure they're dialed into the same frequency. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've seen, especially historically with finance and the desk, and they go head to head. And there's so many arguments you see from those two sides. And it's like, hey, you guys aren't connecting and you're talking at each other. And someone with high EQ could stop that and say, wait, let's figure this out.
I think high EQ sounds a million times better than soft skills from an employer's perspective, I will tell you. So I think
use the name.
I think you got to come up with that. I mean, the interactive EQ, I don't know.
Well, actually, what we've trademarked is EQ factor.
There you go. Much better.
EQ
Much
factor.
better. All right, great. Well, now that we've solved that, now that we've solved that age-old issue, tell me, there are many. I mean, in all my years in business, golly, I've seen a whole lot of personality assessment tools, countless. I can't even count all of them. And recently we've seen ones that are video-based, and I'm just curious, from your perspective, and more importantly, from the perspective of somebody who would be using this first person. Maybe it's somebody who's taking this interactive EQ assessment, or the organization that wants to leverage it. What makes it different from everything else or anything else out there?
So first and foremost, I'm a fan of personality tests. I like them. I've participated in them and administered them since the mid-90s, believe it or not. The thing with personality tests is they measure someone's temperament. Are you an extrovert, an introvert, high detail, organized? And it determines whether someone has the proclivity and fit for the job role. What we do is something completely different at Interactive EQ. Interactive EQ is more about the interpersonal skills. It's the dynamics of the relationship with internal customers, your colleagues, as well as external customers. It's not about someone's ability to do their own job. It's more about their ability to connect with others. So it measures something completely different. What really differentiates us from a lot of the other video assessment technologies that are out there, and I've researched them before I even decided to pull the trigger on this while I was doing the product market fit validation. Most of the others are recording someone's response. They push a button and they answer a question that may come up as they read on a software, or some of them may be, like the meeting that you and I are having right now. It's a one-on-one remote meeting that's recorded. Interactive EQ is predicated on one statement. I always said, if you can summarize what you do in one statement, it's important. And that is, know what kind of people you're hiring before they start working. It's kind of a positive way of the old adage, you never know what you're getting until they start working, right? Well, unfortunately, when people go with that and they want to just wing it, or let's throw them in there, they'll sink or swim. We've heard that a lot, right?
Yeah.
What happens is the people are having to learn on the job, and they're making mistakes on the job. And the company and the ownership are the ones that are suffering, as well as the customers they're dealing with, the colleagues that they're dealing with, and significant inefficiencies. It comes at a really high cost. And so what we do is we create the environment, a very rich, experiential, immersive adventure, if you will, where people play a first-person character with other real people in a video environment, and they are immersed in a real-life scenario. So it digs so deep into the pits of that individual's true person that they are, taps into their EQ, into their soft skills to make these decisions and be aware of what's going on. And by delivering it in our rich format, we are able to get a lot more out of that candidate than other traditional video assessment tools.
Got it. Well, I think that's incredibly important, because I think that, let me start with this, that, some dealerships, certainly all big organizations, right? Whether they're in hospitality, industrial, healthcare, they all have very large formal HR departments, well structured, and many of those have been utilizing some type of assessment for years and years. Most dealerships, I don't think, have. I mean, there are dealerships that have been using personality tests, to be sure, but I would dare say that most of the dealerships that I've spoken to have not really gone down that road. And I think that what you're referring to can change that, because one of the challenges, I think, for stores, to be sure, is not only how do I find employees, but how do I find the right one, right? The likelihood of the right one sticking around, being retained, having a positive impact on the team, a positive impact on customers is dramatically different, as you know, Napo, versus the wrong one. But here's the problem. I can't tell. Like if I go through a traditional process, putting an ad out there on Indeed or some other platform, and the next thing you know, you get a bunch of CVs in, resumes, and you go through those and you narrow them down, and I'm on the phone with people. Maybe I'm having a first interview. Most people today, these resumes at this point are AI driven, right? These resumes look pretty good. Everybody looks like Superwoman or Superman. And Zig Ziglar said something 100 years ago, never left my brain. Most people stop looking for work the minute they get hired for a job. That was a brilliant statement. And too many of us have experienced that. Too many of us have seen Superman, in an interview, and then they show up and they're not even Clark Kent. So it's hard to tell. And people have been trained. We've been conditioned. We understand. I was just talking to a dealer recently, Napo, that they have somebody in their team that if they could interview for the head of the CIA, they'd nail it. They could do an interview for the head of a major car company, nailed it. Boeing, no problem, got that. But yet they couldn't run their department to save their behind. So people have been conditioned, they've learned. And I think tell me what you think of this. Is what interactive EQ revealing is the difference between somebody, as you said, who has these hard skills. The difference between somebody who could and somebody who will handle a situation the way you want them to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the difference between someone who can go through the motions of the job, right? Again, that's the baseline.
Check the boxes,
or someone who can think on behalf of the organization and anticipate things. Not only be able to problem solve, but anticipate and circumvent problems. How about that, right? People who have that inner sense of urgency and understand there's a follow-up call that needs to be made. There's a customer that I can tell this is not sitting right with them. The ability to sense those, and it's a moment's instance, and the ability to improvise, like I said, and have those X factors that frankly are much harder to teach than hard skills. Those are the types of things that make life easy for ownership, for leadership. It's the kind that gives you a deep bench. It's the kind that really builds that massive repeat and referral business to where if you're like a car dealership, you got that group that always likes to just come by because they just like to be around the organization. You start increasing that, and that's when they start bringing in more and more referrals. You start having to spend less on advertising. I mean, everything just starts clicking because you have that incredible bench. By the way, one of my favorite Zig Ziglar quotes, if people like you enough, they will lie for you. And he said that in the context of how often does a car deal go wrong but then they will give you 100% on that survey score because they really like you. If people like you enough, they will lie for you. That's my favorite quote from him. And again, it's directly tied to EQ. If you can make that connection with people, they will be loyal to you. They will pay more for you. Everything just starts clicking. I think the key is soft skills are abstract and hard to measure. And historically, we've relied on gut feeling.
So
I can't be every time. Sorry to interrupt. How many times I've heard people come and say, I really like this person. And I said, what do you like about them? Oh, great attitude, so positive, energetic. And I said, well, it's a job interview, and I would imagine they would be positive and energetic. And they say, well, better than a few people we have now. And I'd say, since when is the hiring bar the bottom of the barrel? We want to identify our stars. So that's what we're aspiring to hire towards.
You know, just touching on what you were just saying, is there in your mind a disconnect when dealerships go out and they use some form of a headhunter or recruiter, if you will, to help fill a position? Does that create gaps? Does that create problems? Does that create challenges that ultimately, unwittingly, ends up causing somebody to get hired that turns out to be not who you think they are?
Potentially, and I wouldn't put it all on the recruiters. I think there's something.
I'm not saying the recruiters. I'm saying the process where you start out with a recruiter. The recruiter's getting the first look. We're relying on their expertise, as we should, to take a more than a cursory look, but just help vet out initially, and then at some point they're going to get turned over to the store. Now that person in the store who's going to be interviewing next is somebody who is not a hiring manager, has never been trained to hire somebody, has never been trained on the right questions to ask, and they're going to probably take a different tack, different approach, maybe even see different things than a recruiter. And then you're going to ultimately get to a point where maybe there's some pressure, real pressure to hire somebody, and then it's not a matter of looking for the person, but just getting a person. I mean, in the mix of all of that, is there, in your mind, challenges that could be solved through the use of interactive EQ?
Very good. First of all, everything you said was spot on. And really, when the deep dive and digging comes in, that's when it gets in the hands of the hiring managers. And unfortunately, hiring managers historically have not been trained to be recruiters or interviewers, right? I mean, they've got enough on their plate to be able to do the job and lead people. That's usually not an area of emphasis. And you look at how some of these interviews go, they tend to be high-level conversations, multiple interruptions, especially if you're in a brick-and-mortar scenario where people are coming in and out of your office, phones are ringing, and the potential for distraction. But just the ability to answer those probing questions and be able to go to the next level with that question and go deeper and deeper and peel the layers of the onion, that's something that, frankly, not only in the automotive industry, but beyond, hiring managers have fallen short on, and it's not their fault. And what interactive EQ does is, before you get your revenue generating or revenue contributing people involved, like your sales managers or your directors, right? Let the recruiters go through phase one and serve up the first set of people. But then right before you're going into pulling these people that have the tough schedule and maybe should come in later or aren't very good at recognizing EQ and soft skills, this is where interactive EQ comes in, gets inserted. You get that feedback, which is an incredibly deep, rich assessment that breaks down exactly where someone did things right and showcased their EQ and where they could have done better. And not only is it a great hiring tool, but it's also ideal for anyone who wants to evaluate an existing staff across the board.
I was going to ask you that. So, I mean, the obvious way to utilize this, what sounds like a revolutionary approach in terms of assessing somebody, you would think, hey, if I'm looking to hire somebody and I get down to 4 or 5 candidates, this might be the perfect time to deploy the interactive EQ assessment, and it'll help me to understand what is the level of, that EQ X factor that each person has. But it also seems to make a tremendous amount of sense that if you have, 30 associates, 50 associates, or 500 associates, why not have my top performing associates take that very same assessment so that I can get an idea, if you will, of almost like the DNA of that performer, not just the performer in terms of performance, but that person who just gets our culture, that person who understands the importance of esprit de corps, that person that brings people together, can make employees, produce more than they thought they had in them, can handle very complicated or delicate situations with clients. What if I put that and had my top 20 associates take that? Can I create a bit of a template or some way of saying, these are the common threads? Is there some measurement? I could see some common threads or patterns that then when I use interactive EQ with prospective new associates, I can see if they sync up. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Have those benchmarks. That was great. It's you have the benchmarks, you identify your high performers, that the traits of the high performers. And so when you do get an applicant that comes in, you are able to compare them. And that goes to, no longer measuring against, but they're better than some of the people we have now. No, that's not what you want to measure. You want to measure them up against your stars. Then you might start looking at someone who's not as experienced in a different light and say, okay, how often have you and I heard, gosh, salesperson's just killing it in their first or second month and they used to work at a grocery store or they were a waiter at a restaurant or doing something different. They just had that X factor, and X factors are not easy to spot. And we feel interactive EQ helps identify that.
I just literally had this conversation twice this week. One was a not a big volume dealership, decent volume, but it's in a small town. It's hard to find people. And this dealer hired somebody who used to work in a convenience store. So everybody always set the stage. I don't know the last time you've been in a 7-Eleven or whatever convenience store you happen to have. But, you probably have a particular type of individual pop in your brain and you're not thinking, hey, this is the person. When I go in and buy some Cheetos and a Slurpee, I want this guy to be handling my clients. Probably not popping in your brain. But this particular young person was hired a few months ago. They're averaging over 17 and a half cars a month. And they've given the top performers all they can handle in this store. And when I looked at the most recent 90-day averages, he's number one by 2 units. So, what allows that to happen versus what do we typically do in dealerships? We're looking for salespeople with experience. One of the things, I can't help but conclude is that too many sales managers are looking for experience so they don't have to get off their butts and go train somebody, right? But the reality is, if you consider 90% of the salespeople on this earth in our business have been averaging 10 cars a month for years or less, their only experience is being average. And I can't think of a dealership, Napo, that is saying, I just can't get enough average people out there. So this could be truly revolutionary. The second one hired somebody, his top salesperson's been 30 cars a month and is just always beating everybody by at least 5 units. New person comes in, first month, 38 cars. Bam. So could have hired hard skills, could have gotten that solid performer, 8, 9, 10 cars a month, great hard skills, but that person would have never in their lifetime sold 20, much less 30, 35, 40 cars. So I really think the more I think about this, I think that it can really have a transformative effect on the collective team. that an organization can put together that would help them have the foundation that they need. Plus, with consolidation, everybody who's looking to acquire more stores, what's number one? They've got to build a bench. How do you build a bench in today's world? Well, you could build a bench off of soft skills tomorrow, EQX, or whatever you're going to call it. But you could do that. You can't build a bench just off of hard skills. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of people that are going through their first year in the business year over year over year. And I've had so many owners when I've talked to them about interactive EQ, and they say, oh, this is great for hiring. I'd love to assess my entire staff. And some of them have said, oh, I'm about to buy a dealership and I don't know any of these people that are going to be working for me. I would love to be able to know them. And this way I can have a much better understanding, but not only a better understanding of who those individuals are, but also to be able to better understand how to work with them. And then who are going to be my rising stars, of tomorrow when I'm going to have them step up and lead that particular operation, or when I acquire another business or store and then be able to have them grow from there. I mean, I think if you ask any organization, they would love to be able to, it's kind of like sports. We would love to be able to draft, home grow, and have them be stars. That's the ideal recipe, right? But quite often we look for free agents, and signing free agents doesn't always pan out.
Quick fixes. Yeah, quick fixes. I think by and large, if you look at most quote unquote dynasties, they are homegrown. I remember when the San Francisco Giants won 3 World Series in 5 years, there was no big free agent. Every one of these were young kids that they groomed, they came up, they brought them up in their system, they were groomed to work within the team they wanted in terms of the team dynamics. I think about the Warriors, same things. Those were the 3 guys that were, Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, all came up about the same time. Young guys, never experienced. And by the way, the coach, Steve Kerr, had never been a head coach. Soft skills. So look at how many times a coach is hired for a college or a professional team. Oh man, they got hard skills up the wazoo, but they can't even make it to the playoffs or beyond the first round. Then they bring somebody in, and I think professional sports is wising up to this because I've never seen, Napo, so many head coaches in their 30s in my life. It's crazy. And I think they're waking up to the fact that having just those hard skills, that's not a guarantee. And it's certainly, in most cases, not going to get you there. And especially if you're dealing with young kids in college or the type of people that are coming up, it's a more sophisticated player that's coming up now. So just having that hard skill coach that just my way or the highway, that doesn't work either, does it?
And more sophisticated consumers, right?
Yeah.
And more diversified consumers, right? It's I don't think the look them in the eyes and shake their hands approach is dead. I just think there are a bunch of other types of groups of people that want to be dealt with different ways. And so reading people isn't about being face-to-face with them. Reading people sometimes means it might even be through email communication because that's how they want to communicate with you. And can you read between the lines that way? We measure for that as well.
I got just one more question. I'm going to ask you a couple of really easy kind of speed round questions, if that's okay. So when I looked at your platform and specifically the, I don't even know how to refer to this. This is so different from anything I've seen, but the video-based process where it puts me in different positions, first person, real world, real time, first person. Hey, David, right? And you're almost, you're not, I don't feel like I'm watching a video. I've seen a million videos, industrial videos, a million of them, all kinds of training you could think of. This was different. I couldn't help but, first of all, I was put in a situation which was stressful, and I felt stress. I immediately felt my body kind of like locking, like, who pissed off this customer? Like, I don't know anything about this. I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. We got to do something about this. But you immediately get pulled in to the situation. Like, it's like the difference between watching a 2D movie or putting an Apple Vision or a Meta, whatever you call it, Oculus on. You feel like you're in the situation. So I got to ask you, how did you accomplish that? That had to be more than mere video mortals. I'm blessed to have like insanely talented people when it comes to cinematography, film, post-production, graphics, creative, all that. But you've done something here that's very different. And can you just share, like, how did that happen?
Sure. First of all, thank you. We put so much time, effort, and resource and energy into building it tastefully and putting it together where it could come across very real. So for you to say that, it means a lot. First and foremost, EQ is really tested and measured during challenging times. When things are good, it's okay, right? It's when things are challenging, that's where you really want to test it. So we pressure test people. So when you say you felt anxiety, that's good. That's what we...
I didn't say anxiety. I felt stress.
Stress.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. I've certainly had plenty of anxiety.
You know what's funny? We had someone take the assessment and they said, I was chewing gum when I took this assessment. It felt so real. I spit my gum out immediately and I pumped it up. And I engaged because it felt so real. No, I'll tell you, I've been doing this since when Google bought YouTube in 2006. I knew it was going to be the video prevalent world. Back then, it wasn't as much. So I decided to get into industrial videos, and I've been working with the same team for well over 16 years. And we've been doing interactive videos for industrial and entertainment, specifically online, choose your own adventures, for gaming, training and education, and now for this assessment. And so there's a lot that goes in there. It isn't just videography. It is a very strong and creative team that we have. And like I said, they take the data, they take the research. It's coupled with a terrific advisory team of industry experts that not only know EQ or soft skills, but they're also in industries like automotive and SaaS and beyond. And they're able to collaborate, and we come up with this really tested and reiterated story. Then we script it, and then we go into full film production, and it's full motion film. It's there's a significant amount of people that work on it behind the scenes, and stitching it all together. We've got 3 patents going on this right now on the entire platform. It's something very, very unique, something I'm very proud of, and something I know is not out there or anybody else doing this.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's so unique. And boy, major admiration for that. I know I've done editing in my past life or post-production in my past life. It is an unbelievably time-intensive, tedious, demanding type of work because you just want to get it right. And it just feels like when you're doing that, it's either right, there's no gray area. It's right or it's 50 different shades of wrong. So major respect for that. Okay, let's do a little speed round. So first car you ever owned?
A Suzuki Samurai. Owned it for 10 years.
Oh my God. I remember my brother had a Suzuki Samurai. Do you remember, like, that was literally when you hear the term death trap, it was a death trap. It literally was. I think if you would have hit a golf cart, you would have been mangled in that thing. Especially if you were sitting in the back of that thing. Oh my God, that's great. All right. So, do you have a dream car? Like if you could even take a ride down the PCH or Highway 1 down to Santa Barbara or up to Santa Barbara, like what would be the car?
I always like the classic 50s Gullwings, Mercedes Gullwings. I think they're
180s.
Great. Yeah, and I've always had a special place in my heart because a family member owned it when I was a young kid, and it's a 1972 BMW CS.
Oh, one of my favorites, 635 CS.
Beautiful,
yeah.
Just
beautiful car. Wow, those are well chosen on both accounts. Okay, I love that. Do you have a go-to like driving song, Napo?
So it's a song by Robert Miles. It's called Marseilles, and it's a great piano arrangement and great for nighttime driving.
I love it. I love it. Okay. And again, you've been in the business for 25 years or more?
Yeah, I've been in the business since 1994.
All right. Tell me, I love the car business because?
The human factor. Not even as much about the automobile or the metal. It's the human factor. Some of the
throw us a bone. You do like the cars, though, right?
Oh, listen. I mean, it's wonderful, right? Okay. It's great. The cars are great, but it's the human element, the fraternity, the going through the battles together.
The experiences.
When I first started in the business, it was the number one volume Ford dealer in the country, Galpin Ford. At that time, we were doing 1,000 cars a month, 150 salespeople, and walk-in traffic was abundant. And we would all get together around 6 p.m. and compare war wounds. How many you got? I got one. I got a half. I blanked. I got two. How was the afternoon rush? And you try to make it up in the evenings. I just have some great memories.
Boy, I'm glad you said that, because until now, like 25 years in the business, but it almost sounded like it's 25 years in the business behind the scenes or with vendors or with solution providers, innovators. But important, you came out, your roots are in a showroom floor.
Oh, yeah. My first 16 years, I started from sales, worked myself up to general manager. And I'll tell you, afterwards, when I got on the SaaS side of the business, people said, how does it feel getting out of the car business? I'm like, I've never been more in the car business. The nice thing about it being on the SaaS side is it opened my eyes to so many different types of operations and styles. And what I realized, as we're using sports analogies, you can win in the car business with different types, just like you can win the Super Bowl with a ground and pound attack, an aerial attack, a championship defense. I've seen a lot of different setups and structures. It comes down to people and execution.
But isn't that interesting? I mean, there really is 10 different ways that you could win in a dealership. I mean, truly. This is such an incredibly innovative, resilient, creative business, by its nature. And you could win a lot of different ways. You could deploy a lot of different formulas. You could do it with many different brands. But the one common thread is always people, isn't it?
Always.
Always. Well, listen, on that note, I want to thank you for taking the time to kind of take us into the backstory of how you came up with the concept, why you were so passionate about it, a little bit about what makes the product different, and how it has the potential to literally transform a dealership's culture, the team, and the ability to build truly a remarkable foundation that you then can create an incredible organization on top of. So thank you. I appreciate it very much, Napo. I look forward to watching Interactive EQ get launched. When does it get launched officially?
It's going to launch next week.
I love it. We look forward to the launch. Hope to keep in touch and look forward to seeing the impact that I really believe it's going to have on dealerships. I'm so fascinated. I want to see these dealerships that take the assessments with their current staff so that they, for the first time in their lives, can understand how to bring on people that are going to be complementary and appropriate and up to the level of the greatest members of their team. So I'm excited to see how this goes. So thank you so much for those listening. I'm confident that you got a lot out of this as much as I did. And I'm just super appreciative of the fact that you took the time to join. Please take the time to share this episode out with anybody and everybody who is thinking about how can I elevate my people, my team, build a strong foundation. Also take the time to go to davidspisak.com, and you'll find this episode along with show notes and how to get in touch with Napo and learn more about interactive EQ. So thank you, and until next time, thanks for joining us on the David Spisak Show.